In this video presentation, first you will see a replay of a video I posted in January of this year in which I described Kevin McCarthy's role in the House of Representatives as it would unfold throughout the year. After that is a video that I created today in which I assess the current situation as it is in the midst of this impending government shutdown, which apparently is at most 24 hours away. So here we are at the height of the full moon, and it's starting to look like Kevin McCarthy may just become the next House Speaker after failing on 13 consecutive attempts. Unfortunately, to get the post, he has given up a lot of his ability to maintain control of his group, and some even say he has made so many unwise concessions that for all intents and purposes, the House is going to be run by the inmates instead of the warden. And it's not like he's a particularly good warden either, so in the final analysis, the whole thing is one giant sorry mess. This is what happens to a party when it drifts into destructive ideas and people over a period of many years, because most think it goes back to the days of the Tea Party in 2010, and then accelerated dramatically during the Trump years, and now culminates with the election of a group of insurrectionists, cranks, and weirdos that are far more interested in getting attention on social media and on TV than in the work of governing the country and honoring the Constitution. And we do need to realize that McCarthy simply isn't the sharpest pencil in the drawer. I remember back in 2015 when he made an attempt to gain the speakership and lost out to Paul Ryan. It was relatively easy to notice that he's not particularly suited to the job of speaker because, to be quite frank, he's not a skillful speaker and/or communicator. He has relied solely on his ambition to get the job at all costs and on his everyman affability that helps him to be chummy with a lot of House members. And since the bulk of these House members aren't particularly bright either, the combination sort of works, but not to the benefit of the Republican Party and even less to the best interests of the nation, because now we are faced with enduring a House of Representatives filled with dimwits and traitors being led by someone barely above the level of dimwit. And now here's the thing, even though the prevailing opinion is that he is almost certain to lock up the speakership by tonight, I wouldn't count my chickens until they're well and fully hatched, because the current astrology is not particularly smooth. Indeed, as evidenced by the embarrassment of 13 failed vote counts. It couldn't possibly be, and really the only change that has taken place relates to being on the full moon, which does tend to reflect a moment of fulfillment and could indeed help him to achieve his desired outcome. Though even then, I would only place his odds of doing it tonight at perhaps 75%. The full moon can be good, but it's never a perfect guarantee and sometimes correlates with the crash of the entire enterprise, especially when the quest has not been well prepared, and this one definitely has not been. However, let's surmise that he does get the job. Then he would be dealing with an entirely different problem. For one thing, this victory would happen under a full moon, yes, but also with Mercury and Mars both retrograde, which typically isn't where you would want these planets if you want something of this nature to stick and last for a decent period of time. Planets in retrograde are seldom a big problem in an individual's life dealing with relatively ordinary problems, but if you're a politician, there are a lot of forces that you really cannot control, and most especially in this case when his job will involve managing a whole lot of very unmanageable, often crazy and delusional people. So with that in mind, retro Mercury and Mars definitely would not be my favorite choice. Nor would it be my choice to have Uranus transiting in a station square in the midheaven, which is sort of okay in that his natal Uranus is a harmonious planet, and so in a square can be just the right stimulus to make something happen. But a square is a square, and aside from the possibility that it could stop you in your tracks and defeat you, also sets the tone for your speakership and means there will be a constant instability and unpredictability that could make the job impossible. And worst of all is the fact that this is the year of his second Saturn return. a Saturn that is elevated at the zenith and therefore quite powerful, but also tightly square the moon as well as the ascendant-descendant horizon line. And the Saturn transit is going to trigger this square multiple times over the next year, which means he is in for a really rough ride that extends into early 2024, and there will be multiple moments during spring, summer, fall, and winter when his job will be at serious risk. In fact, I would be completely amazed if this guy survives until next spring. That was Kevin McCarthy in early January of this year, just before he was elected leader of the House of Representatives. In that video, I mentioned 13 attempts. It finally took 15 attempts, and he got the job. You'll notice that back then, Saturn would have been in Aquarius, which is the sign of his midheaven, therefore it does involve his career. However, his true career house, career sign, is the 10th, Pisces, where Saturn entered in March and very quickly moved its way into the return position where it squares his moon. This makes it a difficult Saturn return and correlates with the problems he began to experience already by the spring of this year. Then Saturn moves forward to 7 degrees where it's stationed in June. However, once Saturn enters the sign and goes to any degree, the way it works is it's not over until it finishes with that degree. Therefore, he is now in the heart of the Saturn return, as well as the trigger to the moon, the Saturn-Moon square. And that you see in here, in this area, in October, November, December of 2023. For a closer look, we turn to this graphic, where you can see that we are here right now at the end of September, and the Saturn contact is all the way into at least the end of January, because once you see that his Saturn is at almost 4 degrees, Moon is at 3.5 of Sagittarius, it's 4 degrees, you have to get to at least 6, sometimes even 7, before the pressure on the square diminishes. And you can see there that end of January, 6 degrees, somewhere in February in there, before it passes. Within this swath of time, he is definitely at risk of losing his job, and most importantly, because we are moving toward a station, which happens in early November, the energy intensifies, even though these degrees do not look like they're contacting his Saturn and Moon because they're a little earlier. Because of the stationary effect, they are almost always even more intense. And then, of course, there are the points where it's right on the Saturn, such as was the case in early September when he came back from his vacation and had to face the music and figure out how he was going to do what he needed to do, which, of course, already by then looked extremely difficult. Bottom line, this whole thing is the intense part of the Saturn return, and it could very well be that he doesn't get out of this and loses his job because of, as I say in the January 2023 video, a group of cranks and weirdos that he had to make all kinds of deals with in order to get his job, deals that amount to unreasonable demands, such as impeaching President Biden for absolutely no reason, because I'm sure you're seeing them try to do it and they can't find anything. So the Saturn is definitely the key problem in this scenario. But if we look at other planets, it only adds to it because, for example, the Uranus energy right now, it's transiting through here and it appears to be disconnected from planets at the moment, rather that is natal planets. However, we see that in its transit, it's moving toward a station at 19 degrees. That is going to put it in direct opposition to McCarthy's Neptune. Neptune being both in the 6th of work and work colleagues, as well as co-ruler of the 10th of career, definitely connects with this as well. Meaning this station down here of Neptune is in no way helpful. And what I notice, the station of Uranus is in no way helpful, especially when it is happening within the same time frame as the Saturn return. So I would add this as another problem. And one need not wait for the January period. The whole swath is like that because it's going toward that point. So the event can happen anywhere in here. Now, focusing on the role of Neptune in this scenario, I would not count this planet as being that big of an issue at the moment. It's in the 26, backtracking to 25 degrees as we go toward the end of the year. His problem is going to be next year when this Neptune opposes Mars, which is a challenging, very challenging aspect in 2024. But right now, I would not consider this one as that big a deal. The Jupiter cycle, Jupiter is making its way back, retrograding at the moment back to 5 degrees, and this puts it in a station fairly close to a square to his sun. This one also does not help his cause, nor does it help that it's coming out of a station earlier in the year, not so long ago from now, in the 15-degree range in early September, which is really close to where his natal Jupiter is, a Jupiter return. But you can see that Jupiter return for McCarthy is a complicated affair because Jupiter in his chart opposes Neptune and squares the midheaven up here. So Jupiter is a happy planet, but it's not going to be happy near its return position, nor do I think it's in any way helpful to his cause at the moment. And then we add the Mars cycle, which at the moment is in Libra, has already gone through the degrees in Libra 18, 19. You start counting at around 16, 17 and go all the way to 20. That's the square to these planets here, which you can find in this area here, essentially where we are, or a few days ago. That's indicative of the arguing and the screaming and the yelling and the cursing that has been going on in the House of Representatives as a result of the difficulty in reaching any kind of deal. However, the next sign which will happen, which the entry will be around October 12th, is no better because then it enters his sign of colleagues, co-workers, and from there it squares the sun sign, and typically those are periods of high tension. Now, as to the resolution of the shutdown, I would think the Pluto cycle shown in green here is probably McCarthy's greatest ally because although in one sense it is this very Pluto stationary activity into the 10th of October, given that Pluto from these degrees opposes the American Mercury, which is connected to government by rulership, etc., a very good correlation with this kind of activity where we're going through a difficult period of conflict and trying to get to the other side. Nevertheless, in McCarthy's chart, these degrees, you notice, are in trine to his Mars, suggesting not only that the problem is solved because of the Pluto cycle all by itself as a government thing, but also because in his chart, you will likely find the way to arrive at some kind of compromise and get it through. A Pluto trine is suggestive of changing something in some manner from one state to another, which in this case would be the resolution. However, given where the entire panorama is in this chart, my sense is that what is most likely to happen is that even after that, the cranks and the weirdos and the insurrectionists and all the other losers in that caucus will not be happy, will not relent. And so, if anything, McCarthy's job is probably even more at risk of being taken away, especially if he is forced into some kind of compromise with the Democrats. But even if he isn't, this whole period in here is extremely dicey going into the new year. Bottom line, I've never liked this guy. So as far as I'm concerned, I'll put him in the category of a number of people I've discussed in the past, most notably the Orange Menace, meaning couldn't happen to a nicer guy. Hi everyone. If you like watching my videos, please consider subscribing to the channel. It's completely free, there's no obligation to you whatsoever, and it does help the channel thrive and grow. Thank you.